a person that was in the job market at that point is a person who was running 36 stores for Apple as a regional manager with like $36 million in revenue under her belt and all stuff. And she became a free agent, and we did a deal and changed the growth and trajectory of our company because we now have somebody who knows how to hold people accountable and how to build teams.
Representing Franchise Secrets, Erik Von Horn.
Javier, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Erik. Glad to be here.
We were getting to know each other before I hit record, and I'm like, "What have you been up to?" Like, been having some fun. Tell me about it. And I get related to the post that I just put out in the Facebook group about like being around top performers, and so I want to go there, man. I want to go. I love having top performers on here, and I love when top performers are doing top performer things. Me, of course. So, but let's give the audience a bit of background, like who are you? Where'd you come from? What brand are you in? All of that stuff. Do that in 10 seconds or less, or maybe more if you need it.
10 seconds. Okay. Javier Santacruz. I'm a recovering attorney. I used to practice transactional law and decided that I didn't like my clients yelling at me, so I changed them out for kids. Got into the math tutoring business, Mathnasium, through a crazy divine intervention story. And now, almost 14 years later, we have 11 locations, 8 in the Chicagoland area and 3 down in Southern California, Orange County area.
Now, no one told you that attorneys and CPAs and engineers, doctors make some of the worst franchisees. You didn't get that memo?
I did not get that memo, and I'm not surprised that that memo might exist, but I kind of always knew that my law degree and my accounting degree were going to be launching points, not a destination.
Good. I like that. So how many locations do you have in Chicagoland and OC? Remind me.
I got 8 in the Chicagoland area, 7 in a consolidated, what we call the northern suburbs of Chicago, 1 kind of on an island by itself. If it wasn't such a great demographic area, I'd stay away from the ones. Then we could talk about that, my experience with that later. And then 3 in Orange County that are all adjacent to each other. We just relocated one from Dana Point to Laguna Niguel, even though we already have a Laguna Niguel location. It's a big enough town where we can get some separation. And then San Clemente, California. So these are all towns that are right next to each other.
Did you start all this from scratch? Did you buy out existing franchisees?
A little bit of both. So my first center I owned, I bought, it's called Glenview, Illinois. The territory was drawn in such a way that it protected the lakefront of the Chicagoland area where we live. Being a transactional attorney, I was afraid a lot of my neighbors or friends would be like, "What the heck do you know about teaching math to kids and all that stuff?" So I thought we'd build and cut our teeth in an area that was close to home, but not necessarily home. And so we did start getting some of our neighbors and friends taking their kids to the Glenview community, which is maybe about a 15-minute drive. And of course, hearing from them, when are you going to open up at home? And so then we opened up our second, a third. I acquired a 4th in Northern California. That's a story on its own, but in Northern California with 2 other owners. Actually, one of the guys that was in Nashville with me, the story we were talking about earlier, and did not think that was such a good idea. So,
did you end up shutting it down or selling it?
No, we wound up selling it. During that time, because now I was in California, I did get the opportunity to buy the 3 in California from an owner who wanted to get out. So that was my first multi-center purchase. Northern California is kind of unique for us in the sense that we couldn't get traction. We've been told by others that it's a local thing. We didn't live there. None of us did. We had me from the Chicagoland area, another owner from the Atlanta area, and another owner from Vegas. And we actually brought together all of our skills, somebody who was strong on marketing, someone who was strong on the administration, the education side, the operations side, and me, who was, because of my backgrounds that aren't good for franchising, the administration side of the business. And we had a difficult time there. Two issues that came up is, at the time, Mathnasium, I don't think, had the operational maturity to support a situation like we had there, as far as a non-resident owner in a community. And so with, team turnover and all that stuff, we literally had one situation where a manager gave us 2 days notice, and we took turns, the three of us. Okay, this is your week in San Francisco area. This is your week, and so it was not a strategy that was going to work out for the long term. So we sold it to a young man who, while negotiating, I had to tell him that the offer that he made, I have a son his age, and I wouldn't make the same deal with my kid. So, but he wound up buying it. He moved out there. Interestingly enough, a kid who graduated from Liberty University, so you probably know his ideological thinking and all stuff, and has killed it in Northern California because he's living out there. And he's also a very charming kid, but he's living out there with everybody, and he's just doing great. So
I love that. Couple things is, I've been in the same boat where I've been successful in a brand in a certain market and go to a different market when we don't have a hands-on owner out there or hands-on partner, and we bombed. Could have blamed the franchisor. Probably some of the franchisor is a fault as well, but ultimately my fault for going into a market where I didn't have an active partner in that market. So ultimately the blame's on me. And it sounds like it's similar for you guys, and Mathnasium may not have vetted that out very well, or knew what it was like to have an operator that's not local and see how that works. So was that something that they had experience with, having operators not living in the market first?
Yeah, that was the first one, to be honest with you, because now in Southern California, I'm also not out there, and I don't have a partner out there. But because I have 3 centers out there, I have a team large enough that if something happens at one, I can borrow from the other. And I think that was the part that we learned, and we started giving advice, to people who would contact us. Hey, you got those centers in California. Are they easy to manage? I'm like, as long as you have a 2 or 3 center, what I'd call pod, where you can at least have a team to support you, because the single center is, I think, where you're absolutely right. That's a big challenge if you're going to go out to a market that you have nobody there to help you if something goes wrong, because something usually goes wrong. It's just the nature of life.
Oh yeah, 100% will. So in that pod of 3, do you have like a district manager overseeing everything, or do you have like 3 managers per location? What does the structure look like there?
Yeah, we've gone through a little bit of variety on both. We currently have a very strong manager who's basically on 2 teams. 3's hard to justify a district manager, and so I'd have to probably go to 4 or 5 at this point. But right now we have a really strong individual managing 2, and more importantly, developing the bench behind him, so that we can now start looking at, managing each facility with somebody out there. But yeah, we've had a difficult time trying to find the right combination. And the truth of the matter is, in my situation, we've had some team development at the management side of my business that, all good things happen for a reason. And I had one of those situations where I had my number 2 guy, with no disrespect to people who like to play with spreadsheets. Okay. As you know, my background was in accounting, so I'm a little bit of a spreadsheet monkey myself, but I had 2. The top 2 people on my company were spreadsheet monkeys, and nobody was getting that human interaction side. And my number 2 person decided to become a full-time dad. And so he opened up the door, and man, by all good things that happened, a person that was in the job market at that point is a person who was running 36 stores for Apple as a regional manager with like $36 million in revenue under her belt and all stuff. And it was her time to go to Cupertino, and her family was in the Chicagoland area. Her husband's family was and she became a free agent, and we did a deal and changed the growth and trajectory of our company, because we now have somebody who knows how to hold people accountable and how to build teams. And the bench that we've developed has made us pretty immune from some of the issues that you have when people decide it's time to move on. Because I think that's the one thing about the franchising business that I've learned is that, in a corporate structure, you have people that are growing, in this kind of pattern. But when you're spread out with your top management, someone leaves if you don't have a strong bench, because you don't necessarily have people who are willing to travel from one side of town to another side of town, adding 30 minutes to their commute. So I think that the corporate structure, it's easier to move up. You're in the same location, but that franchise structure is, I think it's one of the biggest challenges that we have found.
Attention, franchisors and franchisees. There are two really important resources that I want to share with you that will help you avoid costly mistakes and increase your enterprise value. The first is our free Facebook group. It's a community that has over 4,000 franchisees and franchisors in it. When somebody asks a question, they get honest and authentic answers from multiple perspectives. You can join the group for free over at franchisesecrets.com/Facebook. The second resource I want to share with you is if you're a franchisor and you're frustrated that you're not awarding as many franchises as you thought you would, this is the reason I created the Franchisor Mastermind. If you want access to the information, the techniques that the best franchise sales organizations are using to award franchises, and you want what mature brands have with their playbook of having happy, successful franchisees that grow the right way, then you might want to check out the Franchisor Mastermind. The reason why people join is they want access to my Rolodex, my connections. They want the playbook to achieve both short-term and long-term success. They want to increase enterprise value in their brand. Links will be in the show notes or at scalablefranchise.com. So big difference having the right person in that seat versus the wrong person in that seat. What advice would you have given yourself, like going back? Like, would you have tried to hire somebody differently now? And let me rephrase that question. If she left today, what would you do? Who would you look for?
Hire her mini me. I mean, honest to goodness, I've come to understand
there
the
right
value.
now, Javier, that are like, who is that? How would you go find that mini me?
I think it's somebody who understands the human side of the business. It's easy to understand the numbers and execute direction based on this worked for that market, this is working for this team type of thing. But if you don't have somebody who knows how to talk to people to inspire them to be great tomorrow, greater than they were today, to have accountability plans. I mean, we have a thing that I never even heard of. I mean, I worked in my legal background. I had to be a little bit of an HR attorney, and I don't think this was around back then, but things called performance plans. I mean, things that, just basically get people to understand that, hey, you know what, you're not hitting. It's not just numbers. You're not training your people. You're not developing a team and all that stuff. And that is her full-time, gig. And the other thing too is that with my two previous managers, okay, they did most of their work like you and I are talking from a computer screen. They didn't go out to the field. I was the only one going out to the field. And when I went out to the field, I wasn't as operationally in tune as some other owners are. So it's not like I could sit down with you and go like, okay, let's figure out what's going on with this, the system that develops our education plans for students and all that stuff. I was just going out there to take them out to lunch, smile, give them excitement and all that stuff. She goes and spends the whole day out there. And what you see, the way someone picks up the phone, the way someone responds to a customer walking through the door, you can't do that on a Zoom call for an hour. And that's the stuff that we were missing. It's the teaching how to be a strong customer. We just had Jesse from Savannah Bananas as our speaker at the convention and all stuff. And, his book is Building Fans. And that's literally what we now have is somebody who's teaching them that, not looking them as customers, how do you turn them into fans of your business? People that are going to, go out there and talk to their neighbors and, about how great it is to be part of the Mathnasium family. And so that's where so how do I find that person? I now know what that person looks like. So it's a lot easier for me to at least in my mind, go replacing. God forbid she decides to go somewhere else. So, but
we could have by the way, Jesse's been on the podcast here. And he was fantastic.
He's awesome.
Yeah, he's great. We could spend a whole podcast on finding this person. And like, if I was a franchisee that didn't have the right person, and I knew that you did have the right person in my franchise organization, I would be on the phone with you. Be like, what is her background? How would you go find her again? And we started to talk about that a little bit, but like, what was it in her resume that stood out to you that she probably is a people person, can interact with people, has those good customer service skills, isn't going to be stuck behind a computer the whole time, has leadership qualities, can motivate a team, can work with different types of employees, and interact with different types of customers. So like, I would dive deep if I was a franchisee that didn't have the right person. And it's interesting. We have location that was, that was part of the reason that location wasn't a success. We have people that was part of the reason that a location wasn't as successful as it was today. But what I didn't hear is like the franchise systems were very different, like that there was probably some consistency with the franchise, but it was a people problem or location problem, which was kind of like an ownership problem. Anything else that you would kind of say why those locations are successful and some of them weren't as successful, both places?
Yeah, and by the way, before I get off this, because I've got to tell you, I've been blessed in different situations in life. I didn't have just the resume to look at. She actually wrote a book, and it was a thin book, but I read it before I interviewed her, and I don't think that was her resume. It was about all of her experiences working in retail management and the interactions she had with human beings and how she resolved situations. I mean, my goodness, everybody should write a book like this because it tells volumes about who you're going to be. And let me tell you something, I've learned so much from her. I've learned how to better my human interaction with my team and all that stuff. And it's just been a really incredibly eye-opening experience because as an accountant, as a CPA, probably didn't put as much value into that side of the business as people who are obviously in the retail world where you're developing customers, developing fans, would know about that. So, I think to your point, Mathnasium's model, right or wrong, was we have a lot of younger people working in our management positions. I mean, I would say 25 to 32 is pretty typical. And so you're asking them to be the customer service person, salesperson, education director, HR at their center, PR for their community, all stuff. And, maybe their only job they've ever had is, making Starbucks, lattes at Starbucks and all stuff. And so you're throwing a lot at them. Finding that person was not a skill set that I had. When we hired Chandris, the person I was talking about earlier, we had started using a recruiter that one of the guys that was in Nashville introduced me to. And she knew what we needed to be successful because that's what she did for my buddy Mo. And so she would go through the screening process, and all of a sudden the quality of our managers changed overnight because it was something that I thought I can do, and yet I had no proper training or skill sets in knowing what kind of person is going to be successful in all of these multitasking positions that we have, and most importantly, have human connection skills. You got to have empathy. You got a parent calling you up and telling you my kid is struggling in math. Okay. We've actually heard phone calls, sample phone calls, of some parent calling up and going like, yeah, I'm reaching out because my kid's having problems with math. Oh, that's great. Oh, that's great is the response that you make to. I mean, it's like, did you bother to listen? So I don't think I had those skill sets. I'm not sure that is something that a franchisor could do a better job with. But I think that knowing the franchise system, at least from the Mathnasium perspective, I don't know what you've seen on your side, but you've got a lot of people who come into this world to buy a job for themselves. They've retired as a school teacher or an engineer, and they want to, or get moved out of their position and want to buy a business and all that stuff. And to be honest with you, they don't have all of those soft skills that you really need to be a business person in retail. It's a whole different world, as you know. Okay. And so I think that, it is something that I've talked to the franchise, because I've been part of the franchise advisory committee and all stuff, is that, it's great to teach everybody how to use a database that, is going to produce, but you really need to think about the growth skills that nobody really considers when I'm buying 2 or 3 more franchises. At what point do I need a manager? What point do I need to get out of the center and all stuff? But I think the soft skills, especially in this business, because it is such an empathy-laden business, that is something that if you're not teaching that or supporting it, you're probably going to find the difference between a good operator or a bad operator. And in my situation, a good center director versus a bad center director. So
you've talked a lot about, you keep referring back to Nashville, and I know what you did in Nashville, why you were there. But like, you've referred back to Nashville and the people that you were there with multiple times already.
Yeah.
So why were you in Nashville? What were you doing in Nashville?
I can't tell you what we were doing, because Nashville now has a reputation of Las Vegas. What happens in Nashville stays in Vegas. Although I do have one memory of Nashville, because this light pole I thought was going to move out of my way didn't, apparently, while I was talking and walking at the same time. It didn't.
Or something, I'm sure of it.
No, it stood its ground, man. So anyways, kind of embarrassing, but I have 3 very good friends that are owners in the Mathnasium world, and our little text group name is Top Dogs. Okay. We are all top owners. Okay. And years ago, we decided to learn from each other. So I think the first trip they took was to Chicago. They wanted to see how, because there's a little controversy over this issue, not in my mind, but we were the first $1 million center in the system, legit $1 million center in the system. And so they wanted to come and learn about that process. And so they came to Chicago. It's kind of funny, because we wound up, shockingly, at most of our visits, but we wound up at a bar in Wrigleyville, and both me and the guy from Florida were trying to recruit the bartender to be one of our managers, because she had all those great soft skills and all that stuff. And she informed us that we couldn't afford her, but nonetheless. So then we literally just started going first to our own centers. We were in Virginia with James's centers. So between the 3 of us, Mo at the time, and he started as a single operator. Now he's got 60 between Florida and Texas and the Jersey area. And then James has got 20 in the Virginia area. Chris, whose retirement we were actually celebrating, had 5 in the Atlanta area, and then my 11. So we represent a big chunk of the system and all stuff, but we started talking about best practices. I mean, we all thought, why are we all trying to reinvent the wheel? I mean, we're some of the top owners. Let's start learning from that. So we've actually had a few owners try to work their way into our group, and so we've had to have those conversations of, are we going to be the cool kids on the block, or are we gonna, and we have stayed with each other, because we like, we have a lot of common interests besides our running with Mathnasium. But a couple years ago, we actually then started going, hey, let's go check out what Sherry's doing in Seattle, or Dave's doing in northern Orange County. And so there is a few Mathnasiums in Nashville. We didn't get down there to visit. So, we were more focused on having a little bit of fun this time, and we did. But we talked business. We talked, Mathnasium business. We, of course, had some of those grandiose conversations about what franchise system we're going to develop. But, Yeah, a lot of it is talking about the best practices about, it's funny because James had just hired a new president of his company. And I was intrigued to learn about it because we've had a lot of interactions for the years that we've gotten to know each other. And it came on the heels of me hiring our general manager, Chandris. And a lot of the skills that I think he hired were in this new person as well, too. So I do think that we do a lot of learning from each other besides, teaching each other some of our best practices. We're constantly, one of the closest guys I am with that group is Chris from Atlanta, who ends every one of these trips with, what was your biggest takeaway? We're always challenging each other to make sure that we had a positive interaction that wasn't just fun socially, but also professionally to learn from each other. I've talked about this with others. No, you can't come into our group. Sorry, you're not cool enough. But find people, maybe got in the system the same time you did, and grow with them. Don't grow independently, grow with them, because, there's a point where you lose the intimacy that of a small group like we have right now. But there's no reason why they can't be multiple, but it's been probably for me, the best support in the system is, Mo, for example, created his own training manual before Mathnasium created training manuals, and he made them available to us because of the friendship we had. I mean, everything he did was available to us, and we talk about pricing structures. We talk about hiring, like I said, he put me in touch with his recruiter so that she can help me find some of the people that we need and all that. So yeah, that's Nashville. We spent some time. We found out that you're really not supposed to throw furniture off of Morgan Wallen's bar balcony, but it is probably one of the finest bars in Nashville. So, but it was a good time.
So, what are some of the takeaways that you've had? Like, as you look back and you have a takeaway, each of you guys have a takeaway, something that you learned, big idea, big takeaway from each of these. Like, looking back, what were some of the bigger takeaways that you've had or you remember that others might have had?
Yeah, it's funny that somehow or another you do find out that you wind up on the same page with people who share a lot of these. But I would say one of the more memorable ones, we went to go visit this guy, Sherry, who operates out of the Seattle area. He's a former Microsoft guy, engineer. Actually, he was part of the team that developed Sheets. And so he's one of those big brain guys. He had automated a ton of his business. And that's what we were intrigued by. And it was kind of funny because the debate we had at the end of the evening, after, some cocktails, was pretty excited. But with the idea of, with all these tools, you don't have to do, quote unquote, all these other things, and versus with all these tools and doing all those other things, can you imagine what you can accomplish and all that? But our biggest takeaway is that somehow or another, we either needed to get Mathnasium to do this or invest in our own little organization that was going to create all these tools and then hopefully recoup our investment by having Mathnasium acquire them from us. But interestingly enough, a lot of the things that, task automation that Sherry was doing that, would kind of almost mimic a marketing triple campaign. Mathnasium has implemented a lot of those tools based on us loudly shouting from the rooftops, guys, look at what he's doing. You need to do something like this. So our biggest takeaway, I think, for us has been, especially with young people, the amount of tasks that can be created through the enrollment process, the marketing process of trying to get a family to come in and complete an assessment of their child and all that, the follow-ups and all stuff. A lot of that stuff got lost in the shuffle. And, we'd find out that our speed to lead in some cases could be 7 or 8 days, not because they didn't, part of it because they didn't want to make the call, but because truthfully, it got lost. It got, they didn't put it on their calendar or whatever the case might be. And so a lot of his system just eliminated human error by putting those tasks on there. So that was a big game changer for all of us, is having some of the automation. And a lot of that was a takeaway from our trip to Seattle.
So I've had similar things where I've been part of a brand and we wanted them to do certain things that we thought would be able to help the entire system. They weren't ready to do it. And so we invested, I think, $30,000 or $40,000 into some software that we created and to help us automate onboarding, management of contracts, and all kinds of other stuff. And fast forward 7 or 8 years later, that brand eventually created that thing for all their franchisees. But we knew, because we were large franchisees growing fast, that it was going to help us. And so if the brand wasn't going to do it, we were going to do it. And it wasn't like we weren't mad at them for not doing it. We're just like, a franchisor has so many things that they can, only so many things that they can do. They can't do everything a franchisee, and especially every franchisee wants them to do, because every franchisee has a different priority level on what's important to them. So a franchisor has to prioritize at the brand level what they can implement. And so, but anyway, we did this. It helped us. We saved money, saved time on that $30,000 or $40,000 investment into software, and we're grateful that we did it. We never recouped it from the franchisor buying it out from us, but we did recoup it in a short period of years being a franchisee there.
I was going to say, it's funny you say that, because part of our discussion was, even if we don't recoup it, the savings of inefficiency will recoup our investment. So you're absolutely right. It wasn't something that it would be nice if we got it back, but it wasn't a game changer or a deal breaker for us. So
you didn't have an attitude towards a franchisor for not prioritizing that, or you wouldn't have. We didn't. We're grateful for when they do implement the things that we are wanting as franchisees. How do you one, maintain the right mindset of being helpful and not trying to force your ideas on the franchisor? And how do you do that?
It's interesting, because I think I did come away with a little bit of corporate America perspective of the things that you talked about. Okay, you have your priorities, but I'm the owner. Okay, it's my business. Okay, I have my priorities, type of thing. And so I think I was able to balance some of that perspective. But I know that a lot of great examples. So the advisory committee was started because someone caught wind, someone blew the whistle on us, but we were actually looking at unionizing our ownership, through some of these organizations. I have had the opportunity to discuss them, and there's no such thing as a union. There's owners who are paying a lot of legal fees to trying to force positions on the franchisor, but at the end of the day, franchisor holds all the cards. But nonetheless, so they started this advisory committee, and I would say that the first couple of years, it was far more collaborative, more seeking input on the priorities that the franchisor was going to explore, and we felt pretty good about it. But all of a sudden, there was this shift and change, and it became more of a check the box, tell you what's going on type of thing. And so, it is something that I think you just have to look at the structure. And I think you have to participate. I think you're silly to sit on the sideline and not think that your voice matters, whether, you're a top owner and having a conversation with, your C team, your marketing team, your executive team, and just making sure you're voicing your opinions and desires to see them to move in another direction. But, yelling the loudest in a room isn't going to get the needle moved for a lot of these folks, because, like I said, at the end of the day, it's like, okay, but it's our business. Okay, you're a franchisee, which we renew every 5 years, reminding you. So I think it's an interesting relationship. I think that a healthy one does help benefit the conversations that you have, and I think the input you can, or the impact you can help with them making decisions. I'll be honest with you, I was one on just recently. So the Mathnasium process, call it, okay, is you bring your kid into our center because they're struggling with math, okay, which means you're now getting them supplemental math education. So they're mad at you, okay, they're mad at me when they walk in the door because I'm the guy to be teaching them math. All right. And you're trying to get them through this process. And so the old Mathnasium way, which is interesting, was started by, I think, 3 founders who had an education emphasis, but not necessarily customer relationship type of thought process. And we had a 10, maybe, let's call it, depending on the age group, 8 to 12 page assessment. Okay. 60, 70 problems in math that unless you were brilliant, you can't accomplish, you can't complete. No child can. And I'm talking about after 45 minutes, an hour and 15 minutes. And a lot of owners had this mentality, well, you got to finish it because I got to be able to assess you and everything else. And it was pure torture. You got this kid who hates math, now hates you even more because you just tortured him for an hour and 15 minutes. You couldn't even throw him a bone and just say, hey, listen, let's just cut. So with another owner, we talked about, as a parent, and I'm a parent, I don't need that many data points for you to convince me. I told you what the problem is. My kid's struggling in math. I don't need, a 300 question quiz that's going to tell me what I already know. I want to trust you with certain level of expertise. So we created this shortened assessment. It's 20 questions. It's just enough data points to get us a starting point. And okay, now your kid's ready to go. This is the areas that we're going to focus on and start teaching them, but then we're going to do even more of a deeper dive while they're there and everything else. And the system just got released today. We've been as people who initiated this conversation with the leadership, who respects our opinion, okay, who saw it as an easier way to market, because now you can tell a parent, that was the other part of it too. You tell a parent, I need you to come in for an hour, and you keep them trapped for 90 minutes, okay? Parents are going to be pissed off at you because now you've wasted a lot of their time. But anyways, that it was helping the marketing side of the business and everything else. So yeah, they finally revised it. They've got it up and running. It's refined, and they just released it to the entire system. And now they're teaching everybody not to use the old way of torturing a child in order to get their parents to sign up for them, but having a way to give them enough for you to get enough information. And now I'm actually taking it to a new step. I got a center director who's a great salesperson. He goes, why do we even give the assessments at all? I agree. So those are conversations that we have with leadership because they respect the work that we've done and everything else. So I think to your point is, yeah, I mean, it's good to have those relationships and advocate for things, but you also got to be realistic as, who brings the bat and the ball to the game, who owns it.
So key takeaway, don't torture your customers' children. Number one, don't do that. But you also said respect. Like you said, they respect us. So you brought a solution to them, but you knew that they would hear you and listen because there was a level of respect. Can you dive deeper into what you mean by that might help other franchisees help the franchise system get better as a whole?
So it's interesting because I stood my ground. There was some stuff happening earlier on when the private equity firm came in, and I pissed off our president at that time. It impacted our relationship, not from respect for our capabilities, but from a person that he would even consider listening to. And at our convention, we happened to be walking towards together at one point, and I said, hey, listen, if I was out of line or if I got a little excited, sorry about that. And like that, it changed because I had already earned his respect as an operator, but I had distanced myself because I took a strong position on an issue that we were having. But so he's the guy I called when I had this idea, and he immediately said, this is awesome. I need to get our education person on the call with you. I need to get our marketing. So he all of a sudden put wheels in motion. So, respect doesn't mean just, taking everything that they dish out. That sometimes you do have to still continue to stand up for yourself. But, we are a strong operator. We have great territories. We are very vocal in our support of the franchise system. We are always constantly coming up with suggestions on how to improve some of the, the operational systems, the education system. So I think that that's where the respect comes from is, not just bitching for the sake of bitching, but, bringing solutions to the table, not just problems. Everyone can bring problems. Everyone's good at that, but bringing solutions. And I think that we've been orientated towards finding solutions. So
dive deeper into that, because I see it a lot. Franchisees, myself included in the past, would come with a problem. There's always problems, always things that can be done better, always things that are being done wrong, always things that I think could be done better when they're actually being done pretty good. So we all have ideas as franchisees. Bringing solutions versus problems, like, expand on that. What do you mean by that?
Well, just the example I gave you on the process of enrolling students. Recently, it's crazy. You look at the world we live in today. Okay, people buying condos sight unseen. People buying cars that get shipped to you instead of a car you drive on a lot and all stuff. And I'm like, why are we making the enrollment process that hard? Let them sign up online. And so we're now actually experimenting with setting up the process where a parent can just click on a button and say, enroll my kid. Here's my credit card. Now I've advocated for, I understand people's consternation for the fact that when they see, do you want to choose a 12-month contract? Someone might go like, well, just want to check this place out, for a little bit. So just make every online enrollment for 30 days. So I think just helping them solve some of their own problems, or putting something out there that, especially with a new PE firm that's, got a appetite to see increased enrollments, increased revenues and all that stuff, helping them, find alternate ways. So another example, I got into this business. My son was in 7th grade when I first learned about Mathnasium, and, had run the center for a couple of years. He's in high school and he's in sports. And so his commitment to fixing all the things that were wrong with his math were, hey, Dad, I just got a quiz I got to get through next week, or a test and all that stuff. So we started what we called the High School Math Resource Center. We basically weren't going to use the Mathnasium curriculum to teach them 6th grade math that they should have learned in 6th grade. We started just saying, hey, drop in like you're at study hall, except you don't have someone at the front desk who's just sitting, looking at their watch. You actually have someone who's going to be able to teach you math and all stuff and help you get through your homework. And our first ownership, our regime, the founders, hated it because it was not Mathnasium. Okay, our private equity guys are like, love it. It's revenue. And it's kind of funny that I don't mean to be that. We want to hold ourselves out as the math experts in our community. And yet we're telling high schoolers, if you don't do it our way, we're not going to teach you math. It's silly. And so I think that's kind of the philosophy that we approached it with is, we have kids who used to be with us in 6th grade and 7th grade. And now all of a sudden in high school, it's like, we can't help you the way you want to be helped and all this stuff. So that was another area where, bringing solutions, bringing, at least thoughts and ideas of how we do things that are provoking for the franchisor who's looking for ways to better their reputation in a community, increase their revenue shares and growing their so I think it's, again, that's where I think could I have complained and said, I hate your high school curriculum, you guys got to do something about it? I could have done that, but we just, and on that day, it's kind of what you were talking about. We just did it our way. And then people started discovering what we were doing and finding out that there was more owners who thought the same way we did, type of thing. But so then we started vocalizing it. We were proud about what we were doing and all that stuff. But it's amazing how what was met by resistance with the founders is met with reception by the new firm that's taken over. So
it's interesting how even things that, like, you got buyers raising their hands, customers raising their hands with a credit card saying, I'm ready to buy. And yet we like to say, well, fill this out, do this, and bring resistance and friction. I did that with the mastermind programs. I got a mastermind program for franchisees and franchisors. There used to be a form to fill out, and then they would set up a call to talk to me or somebody on my team. I'm like, half of these people just want to join like I do. So I put a thing on there. Do you want the credit card? Put your credit card information now, or do you have some more questions? Half the people just put their credit card information in to join. And then the other half have a couple questions, and it's really easy. But let the buyers buy. They're ready to go. They don't need all these all these different questions. Hey, in 30 seconds before I let you go,
Yep.
let's give a shout out to my buddy Derek Pipcorn, who's in the mastermind, franchisee mastermind, and I know that you know him and you guys do some leadership stuff together. Talk about that, working with another franchisee in that regard.
So it all came about at a convention. I decided for the first time I wasn't going to bring my team out there because a convention, I think, should be an ownership. We're socializing, we're hearing Mathnasium talk about the growth and everything else, and so I don't think it was the proper venue. The classes that they held tried to keep owners interested as well as employees and all that stuff, and so I was walking down the hall. Derek was on the MFAC with me, and another owner, and I said, I'm really thinking of creating my own leadership workshop and keeping my center directors. It was the first year I had not brought my center directors out here anymore, but just doing something where they feel, okay, you didn't take me to Disney. Okay. They feel like, okay, we just spent some money on them, but we also have our breakout sessions or our programs to the skills that we want them to start developing. And so Pipcorn's like, I'll do it because, like I said, he's neighbors across the border from me and all that stuff. And so then we started talking about other owners we'd want to incorporate. So we had another multi-center owner in the Chicagoland area that owned about 5 or 6, and she's up to about 8 or 9 right now. And then another ownership group. And so we all got together and said, do we want to do this? And I got to tell you right now, the only painful part of it is, and it also made me grateful that I don't have to actually have any daughters, because planning this event was like planning a small wedding, and that was a pain. Okay. But somebody had to do it, unfortunately. So this year was our second year, and we actually had corporate people come out, and we were kind of hoping that they'd be like, hey, these are great. We'll organize them for you, but no, they didn't say that. So, but it's been great because in 2 years, we are now teaching our team. And I got to tell you the best takeaway from this whole thing. There we go. What was your best takeaway? The best takeaway for us was hearing our team say, I've been to conventions and this is better. I learned more, because they learned the skill sets that are important to them, not the skill sets that are important to owners. So, but I would say that would be my big shout out on that.
I love it. Javier, it's been great having you on. I think I can't wait to get feedback on this. I got listeners that text me and email me and message me, and they tell me all kinds of stuff that they're learning. And so I think this was a great session. I love how you are. It's clear to me, I'm reading between the lines, that you have given pushback to the franchisor at different times, and yet you understand that relationship and how it ultimately benefits you to work with them. It's like at that whole thing that Greg Nathan talks about, the stages of a franchisee. You go from glee to we, and it's clear that you're in the we stage. Both, you've been there probably with the original founders and with the private equity company, and that to me says a lot about you and your team and the people that you hang out with. So thanks a bunch.
Thanks, Erik. Appreciate being on.
Thanks for listening to the Franchise Secrets podcast. Links to everything can be found over at franchisesecrets.com. And if you want my help with anything from starting your own franchise to growing your current franchise business, please visit scalablefranchise.com.